Well, good morning and welcome to another week on my allotment. It's Sunday morning. I only posted a video yesterday afternoon, but I woke up this morning at 5:30, and we've got very thick curtains because we like to sleep with the room very dark and cold. And I could sense our bedroom was light at 5:30, and I dashed out of bed and peered open, and it was snowing hard. I mean, my son's out in the Northwest Territories in Yellowknife, and he looks at this and he thinks, "Dad, that's not snow, that's a heavy frost." But I don't know about you, when I was a child, if I got up in the morning and I looked out the window and there was snow, I had this overwhelming urge fill up inside of me to get out quick and get the sledge and get up the Darlan banks in Kent and go sledging before the snow disappeared, because it always goes so quickly. Of course, back then when I was a kid it stayed around for days, but anyway, and I've never lost that overwhelming urge. It's like a childlike thing in me that I can't subdue, and I wouldn't want to. Anyone, and I'm thinking of my parents now, anyone who gets up in the morning and looks out the window at snow and goes, "Oh no," I feel sorry for them. And not for my mum and dad, they're in their 80s and they'll fall over and break a hip if they go out in this. Sorry, mum and dad. But for people of my age, and more importantly younger, if you don't look out the window, see snow and rush out, maybe not at 5:30 in the morning, well then you have my sympathies, because snow is the most magical thing. So yeah, 5:30, I'd set my alarm for 6:30, so I switched that off. I got dressed and I drove up here. There's a very steep hill, the main road, the A48 that goes through Chepstow, and I guess it was about 6 o'clock I went through, maybe quarter past, I don't remember, and there was a policeman on the hill trying to direct traffic up the hill, and they were slipping and sliding around. There was a queue to get up this hill at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. Bearing in mind we're in lockdown. Where they're going I don't know, and the policeman was wasting his time because the car's wheels were spinning. Well, of course I forego the van this morning and got straight in the Land Rover. That's the beauty of having a Land Rover. I just put the hill descent control on, took my foot off the accelerator and the brake and steered it, and the car did the rest, and we came down the hill beautifully and drove out here. So welcome along. I'm not going to do anything today, obviously. I just wanted to be up here when the snow was here. Yeah, so I'm going to go and sit back in the shed with the most beautiful fire and just keep putting the wood on, reading my D.T. Brown's seed catalogue. It's the definition of sad, isn't it? But anyway, you're very welcome. And obviously, this video will be made up of more bits later in the week when I expect the snow will have gone. I would expect the snow to have gone today, but I don't know. Cheers. My arms have stuck to the snow. While the place is quiet, I thought I'd tell you a little bit. It's not really a story, it's just a fascinating fact. My daughter is in the RAF and she's a police officer. And she did her training at Southwark Park, which is on the South Downs overlooking Portsmouth. And it's the Defence Police School. And it was a wonderful parade, and she got a warrant card. And after the parade, we were all invited into the officers' mess, which is Southwark House, and Southwark is Southwick, W-I-C-K, Southwark Park, if you want to look it up on the internet, because you can visit it, and I would recommend you do it. And of course, it was a lovely day, but the real important thing was that Southwark House was, in 1944, the headquarters of Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, and his preparations for D-Day. And, you know, as an aside, you think about that. We're talking today about this current situation and leadership. Dwight Eisenhower agreed to take on the job as long as he was the Supreme Commander and he wasn't sharing it with somebody like Montgomery, who was very difficult to get on with, although he had seen vast amounts of combat and Dwight Eisenhower hadn't. And yet he was in charge of the biggest military operation ever in history. Probably, you know, will ever be. I mean, talk about pressure. Hundreds of thousands of men's lives completely hinged on his decision to go. I mean, I can't begin to imagine, I'm sure most of us can't, the pressure that man was under. You know, he had advisors, you know, Montgomery being one of them, but ultimately the decision was his. Anyway, the reason I tell you this rather rambling tale is that on the wall in Southwark House is the large map of the southern coast of England and the Normandy coast. And on it are various diagrams and bits and pieces that coordinate the landings. But of course this map, which is a large wooden map, probably made of plywood, although I don't know, it's the size of the wall of this large officers' mess. And they had to have that made, obviously, and they brought in, and these people on the day told us this tale of two local carpenters from the Southwark Park area who were brought in and told to make this map of the coast of France. Well, of course, secrecy was paramount, so they couldn't say to these two chaps, just make the bit of Normandy, because they would have then known where the Normandy landings were taking place, which would have lost the element of surprise and cost hundreds of thousands. In fact, it probably wouldn't have gone ahead. So these carpenters couldn't know where the landings were taking place, so they were instructed to make a wooden map of the whole of the French coast. And then when they'd done that, which must have been a vast task for two men with a couple of saws and hammers, they were then brought into camp with these large wooden maps and told to put the two bits that made up the Normandy landing on the wall. When they'd bolted those two bits to the wall, they were taken into custody and locked up in the guard room, and they stayed there for 2 or 3 weeks while the landings took place. I mean, we were assured that they were very well looked after, but they couldn't go home. And of course they didn't, you know, tell their wives because they didn't know it was happening. I mean, you could do that in those days. And the map is fascinating. It's got this bit in the middle of the channel, of the English Channel, called Piccadilly Circus. And so vessels, you know, battleships and troop carriers were coming from as far down as Plymouth and beyond, and as far up as the Wash and the Norfolk coast. And they had to come down, and then these ships went into this holding pattern in a large circle in the channel called Piccadilly Circus. And from there, the commanders dispatched them in the correct order. So obviously the battleships went first to put in suppressing fire, and then the landing crafts, and then the Mulberry Harbours, and so on and so forth. The Mulberry Harbours, if you don't know what they are, they're worth having a look at on the internet. What a fascinating piece of engineering. And D-Day would not have been possible without the Mulberry Harbours. Yeah, a fascinating tale, and it's behind perspex now, but it's preserved. And any member of the public is welcome to go and visit them. You've just, because it's inside a military base, you've got to ring ahead and make an appointment. And I'm sure you can't do it right now, but just think about that. Just go and see the map that Dwight Eisenhower stood in front of to say, yay, go. I can't even begin to imagine the fear and trepidation he felt. But it's a fascinating piece of history, and it's preserved in Southwark House in Southwark Park on the south coast of England. Quite interesting. While the allotment is dormant, covered in snow and not a lot to do, I just thought I'd take the opportunity to expand a bit on the immunity thing I did in the last video. You know, I mean, if you're here purely for allotments, well, you know, you'll switch off. But I think it's a good opportunity to just think about how we do it, why we do it, and you know, if you ask anybody, you know, even people you don't know, is your health important to you? I'm sure almost everybody, I mean, if they've got, you know, any sense at all, would say, yes, of course my health is important to me. But when you then say, so what do you do about that? You know, some, particularly the young, I guess, but not exclusively, would say, well, you know, I exercise and I try to eat healthy and so on and so forth. But a lot of people don't actually do anything in their day to day, to take control of, to take responsibility for, and to improve their health. So, you know, if you take a little moment to think about these things, I don't see any harm in it. And one of my commentators, I think it was Carol, mentioned about mushrooms, and that you can get vitamin D from mushrooms, which I wasn't aware of. But there's a little bit about immunity and mushrooms, so it's a very short passage, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read it to you. And you know, you can discard this information, you know, do your own research, don't take my word for it. Although it's not my word, it's a very highly qualified nutritional doctor. Boosting immunity with mushrooms. Do you suffer from seasonal allergies, runny nose, itchy eyes, sneezing? While your allergies may make you feel lousy because your immune system is busy attacking things left and right, that same heightened sense of alertness may have benefits for your overall health. Individuals suffering from allergies appear to have a decreased risk for certain cancers. Yes, your immune system might be in overdrive, striking out at harmless things like pollen and dust, but that same overvigilance may also take down budding tumours in the body. It would be nice if there were a way to boost that part of the immune system that fights infections while down-regulating the part that results in chronic inflammation and all those annoying symptoms. Mushrooms may just do the trick. Just as algae can be thought of as single-cell plants, yeast can be thought of as single-celled mushrooms. Thousands of edible mushrooms grow naturally with worldwide annual commercial production in the millions of tonnes. But check the nutritional label on a carton of mushrooms and you won't see much beyond some B vitamins and minerals. Is that all mushrooms have? No. What you don't see listed in the array of unique micronutrients that may What you don't see listed is the array of unique micronutrients that may boost our immune function. Researchers in Australia split people into two groups. One group ate its regular diet, while the other ate its regular diet plus a cup of cooked white button mushrooms every day. After just a week, the mushroom eaters showed a 50% boost in the levels of IgA in their saliva. These antibody levels remained elevated for about a week before dropping. So for sustained benefits, try to make mushrooms a steady part of your diet. But wait, if mushrooms trigger such a dramatic rise in antibody production, shouldn't we be concerned that they may worsen the symptoms of allergic or autoimmune diseases? On the contrary, it seems mushrooms may have an anti-inflammatory effect. In vitro studies, in vitro means in laboratories, in laboratories. In vitro studies have shown that a variety of mushrooms, including plain white button mushrooms, appear to blunt the inflammatory response, potentially offering a boost to immune and anti-cancer function without aggravating diseases of inflammation. The first randomised, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical study of its kind, published in 2014, confirmed an anti-allergy effect in children with a history of recurrent upper respiratory tract infections. Well, how topical and how pertinent. And I've said to you before, we overcomplicate life nowadays, and we think technology is the route to success. And yet, evolution has spent millions of years fine-tuning nature, such that if we were to push aside man-made things and just select natural whole foods, the widest variety, nature would look after us. We've just got to get out of nature's way, stop interfering by taking supplements or eating poor food that man has made, but just eat a variety, a spectrum of whole foods, including mushrooms, and your body will look after itself. The only thing on the planet that can cure you of anything is your immune system. Anyway, I hope you find that mildly interesting, and it sort of goes with what Carol said on the last video.
Well, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. There's really no place to go. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
I know that's a Christmas song, but I couldn't help myself. Working seamlessly with what I just said about doing things the natural way and trying to reject man-made and bring in nature. Something, I read it in that book years ago, I think, but it sort of stuck with me, is melatonin. And melatonin is the chemical that you naturally produce in your body when it starts to get dark. It's melatonin that makes you feel sleepy and starts to calm down your body, preparing it for the night ahead. And the holy trinity of health is diet, exercise and sleep. But scientists have long since discovered you can do all the healthy exercise you like and eat the most wonderful healthy diet. If your sleep is not healthy, the other two will never achieve good health. Sleep is by far the most important feature of your life, which is good news for my wife because she loves it. And it's important to get good, healthy sleep. And melatonin is the key to that. And if you imagine, back hundreds of thousands of years ago, and actually not far back, just a few hundred years, we slept in caves and shelters that we made ourselves. And as it got dark, that you would damp down the fire for the night ahead, and the cold would creep in, and the melatonin levels would go up, and you would go to sleep, and you would get good, healthy, uninterrupted sleep, hopefully. Fast forward to today, with our modern lives, with central heating, so the bedroom is warm. There's very little ventilation and fresh air because people tend to put the heating on and shut the windows. And then they sit in front of screens right up until the moment they go to bed. So there's no sense of the darkness creeping in with electric lights and tablets and screens and so on. So we are making every effort to completely ruin any of your body's natural efforts to induce a good, healthy night's sleep. So melatonin levels, like vitamin D from sunshine, because we all think the sun is a bad thing now and we cover our children in sunscreen and put hats and t-shirts on them. And I'm not suggesting you should burn your children, but you should every one of us should get our shirts off and expose our bodies to a bit of natural sun every day through the warmer season. Just with that, we are ruining our sleep, and melatonin levels are now down, and bad sleep is at epidemic levels. So if you want a good night's sleep, turn off the television, turn off your computer screen, an hour or two before you go to bed, turn down the lights, make sure the radiators are off or very low in your bedroom, and that the windows are ajar to get some fresh air in. Have really good thick curtains so that you block out all light, and then go to bed and get a good 7 to 8 hours healthy sleep. Yeah, you may or may not find that interesting. Melatonin is a really powerful anti-cancer compound, and it's significant and not a little bit of a coincidence that, generally speaking, those who are poor of sight or blind have statistically lower levels of cancer, because they're constantly producing melatonin, because their eyes don't sense light, so they're continually in darkness, which raises their level of melatonin and lowers their chance of getting cancer. So there's another good reason to encourage melatonin levels which kick in at night. That's why shift workers get more, statistically speaking, more cancer, because they've completely ruined any chance of a healthy good night's sleep. Now that is interesting. Hope my broad beans will survive this. As with all these things, I start off by saying I'm no expert. I do a lot of research online. I never believe what mainstream anything tell me, whether that's doctors. Because you have to remember, doctors practice medicine. I'm not interested in medicine, I'm interested in health. So I only listen to people who practice health. It's a bit like barristers and solicitors. They practice law, they don't practice justice. Well, anyone going into the legal system, they want justice. What they get is law. And anyone going into the modern NHS, or any healthcare service for that matter, going into that, they actually want health. What they get is medicine. And that doesn't mean I'm against medicine. You'd have to be a fool to be against medicine. It has its place. But where it doesn't have its place is as a first line action against chronic disease. And talking about man-made against natural, a classic example are sleeping pills. People who suffer, and they suffer from insomnia and poor sleep for the widest spectrum of reasons. But many people resort to sleeping pills. Well, sleeping pills are poorly named. They don't induce sleep, they induce sedation. So you are sedated, which may or may not feel like sleep. But talking to people who have taken sleeping pills, they always wake up in the morning feeling as if they haven't had any sleep. And there's a really good reason for that, because they haven't been asleep, they've been sedated. And sedation can mirror very much and look like sleep, but what you cannot get when you're sedated with a sleeping pill is deep sleep. And deep sleep, critically, is when the brain regenerates, it goes through what you've learnt that day and discards the not needed and files the necessary. It regenerates, it repairs. It's absolutely critical to good health, deep sleep. And you cannot get that on a sleeping pill. And so doctors would be better visiting the home of the person who's suffering from insomnia and looking at their life patterns, their environment, their bedrooms, whether there's a television in the bedroom, which is never a good sign, and so on and so forth, because doctors haven't got time to do that. So they write a prescription for a sleeping pill. Next. And that person will never get good sleep if they're being prescribed sleeping pills. So that is a classic example of why seeking man-made intervention should always be an absolute last resort. Firstly, you should look at your bedroom and your lifestyle patterns and how you and where you gain sleep, and so on and so forth. Yeah, quite interesting. Well, although my broad beans look a little bit under the weather out there, I'm fairly confident they'll be okay, because the thing about snow is it looks cold out there, but actually snow is an insulator against the cold, so they should be fine and they'll recover, I'm sure. But I thought another thing I could do is just each week read a little bit out of this D.T. Brown seed book about each of the vegetables I'm growing, and it starts with broad beans. So here we go. There are two main types of broad bean, long pods and Windsors, which are short pods. Long pods are hardier, so well suited to autumn and very early spring sowings, and their seeds are kidney shaped. Windsor types produce rounder beans in shorter, broader pods. Several of the cultivars we still grow today have a long history. For example, Green Windsor, introduced in 1809, and Bunyard's Exhibition in 1884. Broad beans are very high in protein and fibre, an excellent source of folate and a good source of other B vitamins. They are rich in phytoesterols, which help lower cholesterol levels in the body, as well as being an excellent source of minerals such as iron, copper, manganese, calcium, magnesium and potassium. It was once widely believed that rubbing a wart with the furry inside of the broad bean pod would cause it to shrivel and disappear. The Greek philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras, God, I had some miserable hours at school because of him, forbade his followers from eating or even touching broad beans because he believed they contained the souls of the dead. It's amazing what even intelligent people can believe, isn't it? But yeah. Well, it's nearly lunchtime, and I'm going to go home and see if I can get Cheryl to come out with me for a walk in this beautiful weather. It's not cold at all, and yet the snow, I mean, it's dripping, it's dripping off the shed now in the sunshine, but it's hanging around for longer than it normally does. But I'm finished up here, and as I stand at the moment, I've just finished putting up the cucumber frame. I'm going to grow an outdoor cucumber called Suprina, which is an all-female smooth-skinned cucumber, as opposed to the market more, which has got the sort of spines on it, which are a little bit, and you have to peel those, whereas this one should be able to use it like a normal supermarket cucumber. Anyway, we shall see. I shall be trying that this summer. I've sown all my sweet peas. I've got the first sowing of leek has now come up at home. Gardener's Delight tomatoes and crimson flowered broad beans with a lovely flower on them. I first saw on Barry's plot. So I'm fairly happy that whilst I can't do a great deal more on site now, things are slowly starting to move. It'd just be nice to see all those seeds poke their heads out the ground, or out of the pot. So thank you for joining me, and all being well, I shall see you in another week. So look after yourselves, and bye for now.